Welcome to the Marvel Cinematic University podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Canton III, and we are continuing our coverage of the Disney Plus series Loki, Season 2, Episode 2, Breaking Brad. So this should be a lot of fun to talk about. Really enjoyed this episode. We do have some guests, and we do have the super producer, Jake Christie, with us. Jake, how are you?
I'm COVID free and ready to talk about this episode.
Oh, there you go. How about that? And of course, a returning guest, returning pal. He's a bit on a pitch count today. We have Anthony Mays, aka Corn Puzzle, Cinephobe, all it produces all these things in the whole 9 yards. Mays, how you doing, bro?
Pitch count. All right, so I have to throw 100 the entire time, and then you're gonna replace me early. I got it. It's like starting a game with the reliever.
Well, the openers. Don't even get me started on how much I hate baseball now because of the way that they do the opener thing. But never mind. Hashtag wash agenda. We have another guest, returning friend of the show, Rod Morrow, aka the black guy who tips.
What's going on,
Rod,
everybody?
how you doing, bro?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back.
Awesome. And just a reminder to everybody, patreon.com, MC University Power. You could get our bonus content, $3 to get into the Discord and our entire catalog of bonus content. We have a subscriber mailbag on the way this month. We have Fate of the Furious on its way this month, just to name a few things. Maybe a little good beef too. But let's talk about Loki. And as customary, when we have somebody on who has not been on as of yet, we asked them about the general thoughts of the previous episode. And Rod, what did you think of the season premiere of Loki?
I liked it. I'm glad that it's back. And oh wait, is my thing recording? I don't see it moving. Am I good, Jay?
Yes, I see it moving, so you're good.
Okay. All right. So sorry, the producer part of my brain popped up for a second. But yeah, so I liked it. I liked the Loki season 1, so I was kind of happy to be back in the world of Loki. I think just as a small thing, I noticed the practical sets, and I like to see people moving around things that are actually there. So that like went a long way for me. It felt like a return to like, oh, some people with a plan are making stuff at Marvel again. So I enjoyed it.
On that tip, real quick, the production
Yeah.
designer is one of the few carryovers from season 1 to season 2, and actually gets to direct an episode later in this season.
Oh, nice little nugget.
I mean,
there.
you can tell it's because it's a good,
Yeah.
it's not just that it's real; it's such a cohesive vision of what everything looks like.
Yeah.
Yes.
All the stuff with
I
like
mean,
the sea green and the orange this week, where like you could just feel like there's even a visual plan in place.
Yes, for sure. And this episode to me was so different from episode 1 in the sense that episode 1 was basically we're coming off of season 1's finale. We're getting used to the characters again and kind of a little bit chaotic following Loki. This one I feel like they slowed it down, and normally when you slow things down you wonder like how is that going to work out, but I felt like the dialogue, I felt like the performances in this episode, and really the character work intrigued me a lot. Maze, what did you think of this episode generally?
Two things I want to hit. First, on the production design tip, I friggin' loved the automat with all the key lime pies. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That was a great visual look. It's also fits into the dated aesthetic of the TVA. I mean, it's supposed to be timeless, I guess, because, it's unstuck in time or whatever, but there's very much like a 50s, 60s aesthetic to it. And then second of all, what an episode for my man, Rafael Casal.
Mm-hmm.
I talked about him a little bit last week because I was just excited to see him from Blind Spotting with the V Diggs, the movie and the show. Oakland native representing for the Bay Area, got his Disney check, and he did not miss out on an opportunity to really go toe-to-toe with Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston in this movie, hold his own, and give us some character development for a hunter, which I didn't really think could be done. Like, we've had B-15 around for a while. I don't feel like I really know that much about her, but I feel like I know a lot about him after this episode.
I think that is a great way to put it. I think when you talk about those conversations that he has with Mobius and Loki, kind of pushing both of them, and pushing for the first time in the series, seeing Mobius a little off kilter, I found fascinating, and kind of reversing the conversation that took place in season 1, where Mobius is kind of like really interrogating Loki and trying to get into his mind psychologically. Felt like Loki was doing the same with Mobius here, trying to figure out, why are you not interested in trying to figure out what your life is? And that aspect of the character and dialogue I found very interesting. Jake, in terms of this episode, that part specifically, we can stay right there. How did you receive that?
I thought it was a really necessary and well done illustration of a thing that's been like the "you had a life on a timeline" has been a thing that's been said since the end of last season. It was said a lot last episode, but like it never really was made real. Like Hunter B-15 had some visions of her real life, and we saw Ravonna was a school teacher. But it's really nice to have a character actually like emotionalize that and say like, I did go back and live my life. Like they because now that we're allowing branches to go off, like you have a choice now. And I think that what it kind of revealed in Mobius and 100B15 to a lesser extent is that like what it felt like is that Mobius was grappling with the fact that his whole pursuit of trying to fix this or find Sylvie is kind of in a way of distracting himself from the actual question that was brought up. Like that he clearly doesn't want to think about what his life used to be. And X5's whole existence is challenging him on that. It's like, no, but you could do exactly what I did. And what does it say about you that you're not? And I thought that it was a really nice performance, and it was well done given the fact that like he didn't have much to do last episode. And whenever you're a character that's coming in season 2 of a show that already is very talky and already has really strong characters, I think you have to really do well to make an impression. And I felt like it all felt earned, and I like the reversal a lot of Mobius saying he's an asshole and he'll try to manipulate you, and then it turning out that Mobius is the one who got manipulated.
Yes, I like that part too. Rod, what did you think of not only that performance, but I think at first when Brad or X5 in this case is going at Loki, questions Loki's hero journey, which I appreciate, because it's easy to go from, hey, Loki turns into this good guy in season 1 and he's good now and that's just it. No, let's sit and ask the question, why is he all of a sudden turning around and trying to be this good person and continuing on that journey? I appreciate the fact that they went that way. What did you think of that part of it?
I'm a sucker for those type of moments. I'm one of the last people still watching The Walking Dead, and I like when someone brings
God
up
bless
We
you,
that.
bro.
found one.
Thank you. I'm literally The Walking Dead. I'm the last of us. But I like when they took characters and they like flipped them, So you have Negan, horrible bad guy for a couple seasons. Now he's a protagonist. I love it, makes the world feel lived in and real when someone brings that up. And the things that they did with Loki this week made it feel like that first season mattered, and it had real consequences. Even the idea of everyone going, we're all variant, we have timeline homes. I want to check that out. Someone needed to make that choice to make that real, because then it lets you know that, it lets you know that other people are also making that choice every single day they wake up and decide to still work at the TVA. And then of course, acting performance wise, amazing. I love the writing in the interrogation scene, because the full knowledge of that's a person that used to do that job and knows all your techniques, and how he's pushing back and he's literally interrogating them. They're the ones getting upset and needing to leave. I just thought it was just amazing writing and so fun. And Brad as just a character that, I mean, if you go back and find out you were a movie star, dude, it's like I can get into that timeline and be like, I'm not branching anything. So yeah, I totally enjoyed this whole trip.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Mobius that intrigued me so much, and he just doesn't want to face the question, because of the idea of which he mentions to Loki later. What if my life was good, as opposed to what if my life was bad? And that is, when you think about the TVA specifically in season 1 and how they all talked about it's almost like a religious type of thing where you can make a lot of allegories to that as far as like their dedication to the timeline and protecting the timeline and all that stuff. But what if this forbidden fruit, which is your life elsewhere on a regular timeline, that carrot Mobius doesn't want to reach at? And I just love that conversation because Loki's like, it's all right. Like you could look at it and you could take a journey
Well,
there
I
and
like
see
that.
what it is.
I like that Loki can't imagine in his mind. He wasn't even imagining the idea of it could be good. He was like, "Oh, you just don't want to know how bad it was because his life has been bad." So he's just
Yeah.
like, so like he likes the idea of the TVA and starting over, low key, no fun. But he kind of likes that idea because the happiest he seen was with him and Sylvie last year. Like, why don't we just stay here? So yeah, I love the juxtaposition of Mobius and Loki.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. Mace, when you kind of evaluate everything that we've seen to this point in the series and then kind of juxtapose that to what we got here, what are you looking at in terms of not only performance but kind of where this can go? Because I think this was one of the instances in where you get a episode 2 where you kind of have already established you've established the main players, you've established the characters, you kind of put some of the main plot to the back burner, even though you advance it a little bit. How do you feel about where this potentially could go as we know Mobius and Loki and their relationship? And it seems like it's very strong. And I have I don't know. I was very giddy watching that episode because this philosophical shit is where I like to reside when it comes to the thespians.
I feel a little torn about this episode, I guess, on the whole. I think what Jake said last week about it being a really good episode of television, having stakes from beginning of episode to end, and kind of having a self-resolving conflict while also moving the bigger plot forward. I don't feel like this episode was as successful in that respect. I really liked everything from X5, but then it felt like we super rushed through the general docs thing.
That's fair.
One scene, show up and we take them out, but they already killed all the timelines. And, I mean, I was listening to The Watch, and Andy Greenwald can be pretty pessimistic on this stuff, but his main thing was that Hunter B-15 gave us the stakes by saying all the lives in the timeline. And then this week we kill, in quotes, all those lives. And the way that we express that is by having them all stare at a screen with some pixels disappearing. So that felt a little flat to me.
Yeah, that was the weakest part of the episode to me. I think that it must be a budget thing or something went wrong, but I just don't know how. It's such a lamp to me just to have like 5 scenes of universes disappearing, like just like a scene of someone at a park like disappearing. You know what I mean? Like it was always such a small thing, but I think that would have gone such a long way, and especially because we established the one branch that Sylvie's on, and assuming knowing that didn't go away, that means that the only other universe we know of is still around, and so like we actually didn't lose anything as far as we have seen. We didn't lose anything, which I think was that was definitely the weakest thing of the episode, was that the thing that is supposed to be the larger stakes was kind of yada yada. And obviously, like, I don't mind it that much because the stakes I actually care about are Sylvie, which I think is why they yada yada it. But I did notice that too, where I'm like, we're just good. It's just going to be pixels on a screen. That's all we're going to get.
It's interesting when that happened. When I was watching it reminded me, as opposed to like another series that did this well, was when the CW had their DC big crossover Crisis on Infinite Earths, and they had collapsing realities and collapsing worlds, and they just disappeared. But they showed that a couple of times to kind of put over the devastation of what something like that could look like. So I think that's a fair point that I didn't consider, because sometimes you could do more visually as opposed to just telling us, as this show tends to be talky. Rod, what did you think of that point? Because that is an interesting one.
Yeah, I totally take the point. I think at this point I've seen so many world-ending events and universe dust thing. I don't care. I like literally I was like, cool, no, we don't have to do the depressing time of that. But looking at the screen of it visually gave me the point, which is like, oh, they pruned all this stuff. Because I'm not gonna lie, like I was a little confused first episode, and then the way they jumped into the second episode without like a transition scene, it was just like, we're already here, we're looking for him. And I was just like, wait, what happened again? I thought we were looking for Sylvie. And then, when you see the pruning on the screen, it is like, oh yeah, that's what they were doing. They just deleted a bunch of universes. I think they said like 30% of those universe, like, which is a ton, but not the majority. So yeah, I think it didn't, that part didn't bother me as much. I think also with it being 6 episodes, they're probably just speeding up certain things, like, let's just get through this.
And I think that tends to be the issue, which we've discussed a lot on this show, as far as the MCU TV shows. When you are reduced to 6 episodes and you're kind of in that box and you can't really wriggle out of that box, there are going to be instances where it will either feel rushed or it is rushed. And in this case, the argument can be made that it is rushed. We'll talk more about the TV side later in the show, but this kind of still speaks to that, even if the quality of the show is high. So that part of it is fascinating. But there's a little plot point I wanted to hit, because they're doing the temp pad stuff, and at first they talk to Obi just passes them the TVA book, and obviously he's busy doing other stuff with the loom, and we got the temporal overload, and things are going kind of crazy over there. So I posed last week a theory that somebody had, that Obi might be kind of working in league with He Who Remains in this instance. I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm firmly on board with that at this point, but I am a little bit more open to it now, that in just the way his kind of mannerism, in the way that he talked to Mobius and Loki this week, as in, you guys go handle that while I worry about the bigger the bigger situation. And now, just with what ends up happening with him, is that he tries to put the temporal loom together, and the problem is it can't be used because it's aligned to the DNA of one He Who Remains, which means they're gonna have to find a variant, aka Victor Timely, which I'm guessing we'll get that next week. But the Obi stuff, I feel like they're doing something a little interesting with him. Jake, I'll start with you. What do you think about Obi's potential role, and how that might actually expand more than what we think?
So I didn't pick up on any of the stuff you're putting down, to be honest with you. Maybe
that's
just
okay.
because I found it fun. Like, I thought that the whole bit where he was like, do you think this is more important than keeping all of the looms together? I thought that was just a funny joke. I didn't think that he actually was like, no, I'm not saying that I'm not open to the idea of it, but for me, I need to see more. At the currently, it is in like the Darth Jar Jar territory, where it's like fully just because it can't be disproven. Like, just
Wow,
because you can't
AC, get off the
disprove it.
pod, dude. He just subbed you, dude.
I didn't mean to say it like that, but it's just like, at the moment, it is a theory that I can't disprove, but I have not seen any affirmative evidence for.
And and don't get me wrong, I don't believe in it yet, but it is interesting. I do feel like there's like this little thing in the back of my mind, which I'm just tucking away for now.
Yeah, and like, if it turns out that there is something to it, you can go back and look at these things, and it's like, oh, there was evidence, but without that, it's circumstantial evidence, that it only is evidence if it ends up being true.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, Maze, I'll ask you, like, in the sense of Obi, not even necessarily to what I'm talking about, but just his role in this episode. It's a little briefer. I appreciate the fact that he and Casey got together, and Casey's a big fan. That was a lot of fun. But
Shouts to Pillboy. We didn't give him any love last week.
Yeah, honestly, shouts to, I didn't even mention it because, everyone knows I care about billing a lot. The fact that he's a series regular now, good for Eugene Cordero. We got to give it up.
Hey,
my man.
But yeah, Maze, give me what you got on Obi in this episode, and kind of, it seems like he and He Who Remains, or Victor Timely, might be having a little meeting soon enough.
I mean, I definitely think you're right on about them needing Timely for that reason. Maybe there'll be another reason that comes up. Maybe Sylvie's stone will have something to do with that. Well, it's to be determined. But as far as OB in this episode, I mean, I'm not seeing a whole lot of personality.
Mhm.
Like he's more or less a very friendly robot in this role. So I could see him helping He Who Remains. I don't see him aligning with He Who Remains. He seems to me like he'll just do his job, no matter what the circumstances are. I did like the teaming up with Pillboy. I did like when he handed them the manual and said, "Figure it out. I wrote this shit a long time ago. I really don't have time for this. You can do it." I didn't think of that as nefarious. I thought of that as, this is way below me, and how dare you? I already wrote a book about it.
Well, this is what happens when you don't go see the man for over 100 years. You
Mhm.
don't pay attention to him. He probably feels a little slighted.
Mhm.
Rod, how about you? Like, how have you taken Ki Kwan's performance so far in this series?
Well, number one, I have a totally different reading on OB's book thing. I think it was earnest, 100%. Like, I'm asking you a question. If they would have
Mhm.
said, work on this instead, he'd be like, all right, I'll work on that. I do feel like he gives friendly robot, helpful friendly robot, almost like an artificial intelligence or something. But the thing for me about that character that's curious, everyone else in the TVA has seemed to have been reset multiple times.
Yep.
This man's
Mhm.
name and face are on the manual for the TVA, like on
Mhm.
the TVA handbook. It feels like he almost exists like the TVA as an entity outside of a time with the actual. He's the only one that has like an actual timeline. Like they talked to him in the
Yeah.
past and he remembered it in the present. That's
Yep.
why that
We discussed
character's
this
in.
last week. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, that's why that
Yeah.
character's intriguing to me. Not whether or not, like, I don't like, as a personality. No offense to the actor or the character, I'm not as intrigued about his person. Like, does he have a family? Is he where was he come from? I'm more intrigued as to like why did they not reset you in a way that they reset
Right.
everyone else? Can they not do it? Did you create all this? Are you the first guy? You know the whole thing from inside out. So those are my questions for him. Not really character, like personality based.
No, for sure. And it's one of those things where I do feel at least this that I feel like that explanation of why his memories seem to just be like intact and there is something interesting that I feel like they're gonna pull on at some point.
Yeah,
But
him turning
yeah, we'll
evil
see.
or not, it could be
No,
cute,
it
but
doesn't even have to be
yeah,
that.
no, I'm
Right,
just
right, right,
adding to what you're
exactly.
saying. It could be cute, but it's not as necessary as they need to explain to me how this man has this intact timeline and no one else does.
Yes. Yeah. I couldn't agree more with that. The other thing that we get in this episode is the reemergence of Sylvie. We see her in McDonald's. We get the stare
Jesus
down with.
Christ, the product placement. Jesus Christ. I thought it was something last week. We're spending a whole freaking couple scenes at the McDonald's. We
Well,
got
We did too.
Mobius thirsting after an apple pie.
they do have the new Mambo sauce and sweet and sour jam dipping sauces for the McNuggets right now at your local McDonald's.
Whoa! We're not getting paid.
Even
Rod,
on this
I
podcast,
swear to
buddy.
God, if you got ad dollars for that, we better get a cut.
I'm just saying, have y'all had y'all break today?
Now the thing is, I do find it very realistic that Mobius loves the apple pie. That I'm like, yeah, I'm sure he
Yes.
does. I'm sure he does.
Mm-hmm.
Me
He's
too.
absolutely
I mean,
into that.
honestly, ba da ba ba ba, I'm loving it.
Jesus.
What was let me go, let's go around the room real quick. What is y'all's go-to McDonald's meal from back in the day? If y'all, I don't know how everybody's goes now, but I'm just a Big Mac and fries guy. That was always my thing. Jake, what you got?
In my pre-celiac days, I was chicken nuggets always.
Oh, there you go. There you go. How about you, Mace?
I mean, I really only just go there for breakfast. I like
Oh,
the sausage egg McMuffin. That's my
Stop
shit.
McMuffin.
The most consistent in the
Yes.
business. The sausage, egg, McMuffin don't miss.
Yeah.
For me, probably McNuggets with with the hot mustard sauce. I like that, and you can use it to dip with the fries, so it's like you kind of getting them both. But don't sleep on the
little
fish
double
fillet.
dip. Shout out to fish fillet. Shout out to fish fillet. But yes, so Sylvie, we see her. We get the stare down. Jake, I gotta ask you, how do you feel about this little stare down tension thing that we got here? That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that.
I really enjoyed it. I thought that a lot of times in movies and TV shows, characters are like, I don't want to see you, or you're the last person I want to see, but they don't really play that. Like, I really did get the vibe that she was like, you just ruined everything. Like, I had a decent life. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? But of course, there still is the chemistry there. Like, that's the thing about actors, is that like the writing can have nothing in it about chemistry, like electricity between two characters, but if the actors have it together, then like you don't need to put it in the writing. Like, it's already there. And so like there's just, the relationship is so lived in already that like the conversation where Loki is clearly, trying to get through to her about the severity of what's going on, and like it, like, that's what he's saying, but it obviously is so loaded with like, but he more than anything kind of wants her back too, like. And that's what I liked about it. I love when the conversation is, the text of what's being said is actually not what's going on, and that's what we call it subtext. And so I just love that conversation because it was that she saw through the bullshit. She's like, yeah, you're talking about this, but you like want me to be back doing adventures with you in the TVA, and that's not what I want,
Right.
And I don't know, like as much as the product placement did make me roll my eyes, I do think a fast food restaurant in Oklahoma is a really nice setting for the conversation, because it could not be further from a time dimension hopping environment. You know what I mean? Like, it is the most suburban normal thing. And my very important question is like, how did she get a car? Like, did she get it like used in cash? Because she doesn't have a social security number, like she doesn't have an ID. Like, how is she?
I'm sure some magic probably took place.
You know what? That's fair. She probably used some magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enchanted somebody.
Yeah, no, exactly. And Maze, considering Sylvie's decision and what happened at the end of season 1, which led to all these timeline branches and everything messed up, she seems pretty cool with the idea of, for at least presently speaking, of, I'm just gonna let this go. What did you think of her playing off that decision and talking to Loki about it?
I needed more to buy it. I wasn't buying it. I mean, I did spend an inordinate amount of time wondering if it was better to be working at McDonald's in 1982, if the food was better in 1982, just really kind of walking through that whole situation, trying to put myself there. Would I want to be there? And the short answer is absolutely not. I don't want any part of this. Like, it's got to be one of the worst existences. It made me think of the end of Barry, when Barry's in the middle of nowhere and Sally gets off of work doing some dog shit job and immediately chugs a fifth of vodka because she hates her life so much. If you'd given me that, Sylvie, not like, oh, everything's great, I'm friends with my 16-year-old coworker who's waiting for his mom to pick him up. It's like, all right, I'm not buying this. I need more. And as alluded to earlier, it's only 6 episodes, so I don't think we're going to get a whole lot of what Sylvie's been doing there. I feel like she's almost immediately going to leave. And I don't have a full handle on where she's at with the He Who Remains stuff, with the TVA stuff, other than TVA bad.
Yes, which you mentioned, what she does as far as leaving occurs at the end of the episode, where it's clear that she uses a temp pad to travel. Now, Loki did mention to her that he saw her in the future, and I'm wondering if her, with that information, wants to find out why.
So I thought that was really dumb how she handled that. Everyone in this show knows about time travel, knows that it's possible. She should know that if she's at the TVA in the future, guess what? You're going to be at the TVA in the future. You can't be like, I'm not going.
But I'm going.
What are we doing? That's what I mean. It just felt like a hard reset on her. in some ways. And I guess that's because she accomplished what she set out to do last season. But yeah, I mean, not enough time with it. Need more next episode. Wasn't totally on board with it.
And Rod, as far as Maze's point goes, what did you think of the whole Sylvie explanation
So
leading to what she does at the end?
Sylvie kind of reminded me of the movie American Beauty. When Kevin Spacey goes into McDonald's and says, "Give me the job with the least amount of responsibility possible." And that's how Sylvie came across to me, as like, I'm happy here because I want the opposite of what the first season was about, being at the crux of the world, making all these decisions. I hate the TVA. No one should be making decisions. I don't believe in fate and destiny. That's all BS to me. So I'm going to go as far to the place none of you would come looking for me, a fast food place in the middle of whatever. And unfortunately, I feel like that's the opposite of what made that character interesting in season one. You know, it's like, and I'm sure she'll be back in the mix of it because like she does kind of go like, TVA, all this needs to go. And I'm assuming at some point she'll be activated into I'd rather just destroy the whole ability to control the timeline thing. Maybe that's why she's there in that flash forward. But you know, we have time to see that. But the real product placement people should be concerned about is making McDonald's look like it was ever a real job. Cause like she had a car, her coworkers are nice, like, you know, everyone's
That's what I'm saying.
super clean.
Is the 80s just better for this? Like,
Yeah.
is that peak McDonald's era? 1982?
Right, like everyone's worried about the apple pie or just the McDonald's brand. I'm like, they're acting like working at McDonald's is viable. That's like, she would have 12 roommates. Like, cut to she's living in that truck. There we go. Now we got a show. But nah, I as a character, it just felt like they wanted to reestablish like, this is where she's at. She don't want nothing to do with this, which is, you know, a trope that always ends up with the person being a busybody by the end of the season. So I'm sure she'll be activated somehow.
Right. And so you guys mentioned it earlier, but we get the docs bombing the timeline immediately, and it does happen like in a flash. Like you're going from Oklahoma to wherever that situation is taking place, and it kind of happens like quick, and then it gets resolved, and then she gets carried off. And I would like to know because they were looking for Sylvie. I thought that was what they left to do.
Well, that was the lie. That's the thing that wasn't made clear, is that they weren't actually looking for Sylvie. They were placing bombs along the timeline, which that's why I think that the reason I think the pacing of it was bad is because they were a victim of of engineering a twist, when like this should have been a plotline that was going on concurrently the whole time, so we could see it as it was happening. I didn't need it to be a twist. I didn't need it to be a twist that the person on the council, who clearly was not into the idea of letting the timeline still exist, wanted to bomb them. Like, you know, like and the fact that the twist is revealed by Brad just like giving up the information after being threatened, like, we should have been cutting to them. Like, even if you couldn't tell what was going on, cutting to like TVA people in secret meetings, or like there was no reason to only have it at the end, because then you need to explain the plan as it's like already happened, and then that's more telling and not showing. And so, like always, and I think this is a thing that I'm a broken record about, like, if a twist doesn't come along, or if a twist only can exist because you're withholding information, then like it's not really a twist worth having. They were just not showing characters for a while, and that, yeah, like I said, the fact, if you saw episode 1, you'd be like, yeah, of course Kate Dickey's character is gonna do some bad shit. She's not on board.
pretty much. Yeah, that's kind of where I think up to that point, before that happens, I'm pretty cool with what I'm getting as far as the dialogue and the talking scenes, and Mobius and everything that we got with Loki there too. And that is like the only thing that kind of makes it have a hard, like, it takes a very hard right, or a hard stop in that sense. And then even after the fact, where you know, Sylvie does go with them, but then she leaves again, and it's kind of just like it throws things off, and not necessarily like an uncomfortable ending, but just an ending that kind of like leaves you off, even though I feel like for the most part I liked what I saw. so I guess to kind of spin this forward a bit, next it's clear that there's two people that we're going to see. We're going to see Timely and we're going to see Ravonna. Those are the two people that we're going to see. So Maze, before you go, I want to just get your thoughts on what you want to see next with those particular characters, as it seems like we're going to jump into that soon.
I mean, Ravonna's clearly next. She finally dropped a pin. Pillboy picked up the GPS, so I'm excited to see where that goes. Are we going to pick up with the school teacher? Are we going to go somewhere else? I'm intrigued by that. I mean, you got to start clock watching, man. Next episode is going to put us halfway through. So if we don't get Victor Timely, or at least allude to him by the end of next episode, that would be very disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, this felt like a little bit of a letdown episode after what I thought was a pretty good premiere. So I hope next episode is a banger. I hope we get all of the pieces in play, and I hope we start to figure out, like, other than, I guess, the temporal loom collapsing, what are the stakes right now? And Sylvie's not on board with any of it, but it's like we got to fix the loom, and we need Renslayer, and we are gonna need Timely. So let's get him in action.
That's a very fair point, and the last thing I'll mention on that part is that the timeline is now seemingly the branches are pruned.
Yeah, they fixed it,
but
right?
Yet,
So do you need to fix the loom now?
That's what I'm saying. Yet it's still collapsing. So that part is a little confusing as well.
Well, presumably, if they don't keep bombing them, they're going to keep growing again. It's just going to be a problem again in like a month. Because remember, the way that's the whole thing is that it's exponential. So they do still need to fix the problem.
Yeah, fair enough. But Mr. Mays, we appreciate you for joining us again on this episode. Any little plugs you want to get on before you get out of here?
Thanks, y'all. There's a CT5 that I'm about to go record. It comes out on Monday. It's the top 5 animals in Cinephobe history. So
wow.
Well, I feel like I know what number 1 is.
You feel like you do.
I feel like I know what number 1 is.
All right, thanks, guys.
So yeah, so considering what we have with now, I would guess is Victor Timely and Ravonna kind of being the big players coming up soon. Rod, I'll start with you. What do you want to see, and what do you think we'll see?
So first of all, I just want to say I agree with Jake completely on the doc stuff, General Docs. Was that Brad she was talking to last week when she did the head-to-head thing and she was whispering?
Yes. They changed his hairstyle, which was a problem.
Well, that's also kind of weird, though.
This is a little bit of a throw off.
Everyone else executed her plan but Brad, but he's like, there's no real mention.
Like, he just rolled out, and then we don't know how much time passed because all of a sudden he's like this big.
Like, he wasn't going to destroy his timeline. It seems like he was very much like, mine can keep going. I don't know about you guys, but anyway, I just thought that was like a point someone should have brought up in the episode. As far as like fair. Ravonna, I mean, I'm interested to see what she's doing, but not beyond anything other than just like if there's a deeper story with her. Like I'm not interested like personally, like what we're gonna learn about her is what is her branch like? I really don't care. I hate to
me it's the Kang stuff. That's like really what it
that's all I want to know. Why are you and Kang? Why were you cool? Why are you no longer cool? Why did he erase you? What do you know? That's the kind of thing I'm interested with that character. As for any of the variants of Kang, I mean, I'm interested to see when and if they'll show up, how they'll use them. And because, it just on the meta version of this is obviously just like Jonathan Majors' case in real life is hanging over the whole MCU. So I'm like, how big did you change some things? Because this was the first episode. I mean, I guess it's only second episode, but this episode felt like, there were post-production changes made to this episode. Like the way you jumped into it, the way some of these plot lines are clearly like on the back burner, and then they're not talked about, and then all of a sudden for 5 seconds they're talked about, and then it's over. It just feels like maybe some cuts happened before or after, like after the show. So it makes me wonder about that, like if there'll be cuts made to like anything involving him or minimizing him as a character in this show.
So just to add to your point on that, there was an interview with the executive producer of Loki, and he said this was the first MCU show where there was no additional photography. It's possible they may have cut stuff out,
Yeah,
but
that's
they
what I
didn't add
mean.
anything else.
And I feel
So
it.
like I
I
yeah.
just want to say, I feel like things were cut, not things were added. Like
Yeah.
that's it. This like sometimes you can feel like, oh, changes were made. This just feels like
Mhm.
something came out of here and y'all didn't really go back to smooth it, and then you just were like, F it, they'll understand.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point that you made earlier about the jump into this episode was a little jarring, I guess would be the word I would
Yeah,
use.
it wasn't clear how much time had passed, and as
Right,
episode
right,
went
right.
on, you get the vibe it's been like a couple months. It seems like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
that
like
sometimes
they didn't
fast, you
establish
know.
that at all.
I felt like I
Right,
missed
right. Yeah.
something. Like, honest to God, like you
Yeah.
watched a little preview coming in, and then they're just like, "All right, man, we're in London. We got to get this guy." I was like, "Wait, what? What?" Like-
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. How about you, Jake? Where do you stand as we're, believe it or not, a third of the way through season 2? Where
Yeah.
do you stand on everything?
I want to see what the larger, Kang of it all is going to be in the show. And I want to have a clearer idea of how Sylvie's going to be involved. Because I think that I think they need to kind of get her back involved, even though she clearly wants to not be. And I think that her whole thing is that I didn't say this in the conversation just because y'all were going back and forth, but I'm a whenever a character's motivation doesn't seem to make sense, I ask myself, wait, what if they're lying to themselves? And I think she's lying to herself that she thinks she wants to be working at McDonald's in the same way that workaholics will retire and be like, all I want to do is just sit and work on a sailboat. It's like, no, you don't. You don't want to do that.
That's
and-
Pat Riley talking about the house in Malibu.
yeah,
Always
exactly.
trying to
as a
get
No,
there.
you
person,
don't.
as a person who had a job at McDonald's, let me tell you, we were all lying to ourselves. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not. She was working in Oklahoma too. Like, no disrespect
Right.
to the state of Oklahoma, but come on.
Yeah.
Um, I'm from Florida. I can say that. Because if she was if it said Punta Gorda, Florida, 1982, I would have the same things to say. So, so yeah, I'm looking forward to see how Ravonna comes involved. I think the thing that's interesting about Ravonna is that she did
Mhm.
have her mind wiped, and I think that that was not actually said in the text with the conversation
Mhm.
with Mobius and Loki, but I think it's a very interesting one. Is and this is the thing I actually think about a lot. This is my metaphysical question I wonder a lot. Is is your humanity is a person not just a combination of memories that they have? Like, if you lose all of your memory and you
Right.
have no idea, are you how you like AC, if you had your memory wiped, would you have any personal connection to the version of you that was previous? Why would you? You have none of the same experiences. And so Ravonna presumably learned that in a past memory version of herself, she was in cahoots with Kang. But what does that mean to her, right? She has no memory of that. The human being she is now, the makeup of her experiences, has nothing to do with that. And so I think that you could ask a lot of interesting questions is there a humanity you have deeper than just your experiences? And that is a question that I think almost any movie or TV show that deals with amnesia or memory wipe in some way asks that question. And so I want them to explore that because I think that this show has the ability to explore things like that. And I think with Mobius, they can do that too because that's kind of what he's saying. And what he's basically saying is that he doesn't put in these words, but the version of me that's on the timeline, other than just looking like me, has nothing to do with me because the personality I have in my head has nothing to do with that. And so I want to see those things explored because, like I said, it's my personal that is the metaphysical question I think about a lot.
Yeah, I think, when you mentioned the Mobius stuff, I think that is something that they will go to. And I feel like that is something they will pull on that thread and we will get more on that because it was a nice little tease. Now, I do think about the Ravonna stuff with either He Who Remains or whatever variants. Before the Jonathan Majors case issue happened,
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved to see, because it happens in the comics where different versions of them always end up together or always end up in each other's orbit. So them having something detailing that and explaining that would have been intriguing. Now I'm like, I don't know what they're gonna do. I don't know how that's gonna work, but we'll have to see how they navigated that issue. because the Kang story can't be told without Ravonna, and vice versa. So that has to be an element that comes into play, and with everything hanging around that entire story and that entire subject matter, however they tell it, we'll be looking at it a certain way. So that part of it will to see how that plays in the grand scheme of Loki should be interesting. But I will say, like, the highlights to me again were the Loki Mobius conversations. There was it's really good stuff, and I thought that X5 really, like, pushing both of them was some of my favorite stuff in the episode. We'll see where this goes. We'll see if they ramp up and how things kind of get into a more clearer view as far as what the overall storyline is, because there's, as always in the 6 episode things, there's a lot to do and time is running out per se. So it should be fascinating. Any final thoughts on this episode and where we're going? Or are you guys ready to tackle this little article that came out
I
this
do
week?
want to say something real quick, which is that one,
Sure.
I think the show could and probably will get into the huge violation it must be to have your memory wiped. Because right now I feel like everyone's
Yeah.
pushing through because it's a chaotic situation. So they're like, what are we going to do about the timeline? The TVA is about to basically explode if we don't get everything right. And like everyone seems to not even be taking time to consider the trauma. Right. But every person's having a trauma response. You know what I'm saying? Like trying to work through it, trying to control everything, running off to live a life on a branch timeline. Like Ravonna just literally dipping on everybody. That to me is the center thesis of what this season could be about, depending on what they want to do. And then just I wanted to highlight just Brad as a character, as like all knocks to this episode aside, he carried as an actor and the scenes and the
great.
writing, the way they use that character to push the buttons on other characters, which really is that's what gave Mobius a real motivation. Was it started in that scene with Brad, called him Nowhere Man, and the same thing with pushing against Loki. That was all that stuff was brilliant. Like, I don't want to disrespect another show, but just these are the things that make me want to push through for a show, as opposed to like when we were talking about Secret Invasion, it felt like there wasn't a clear vision. You may not execute a vision perfect, but this one at least feels like they have a vision for these 6 episodes.
Yeah, and I think also it helps that when you have established these characters already, it allows you to be able to play with them in different ways, and you could take some TV-like swings that you would not normally take because, I mean, both Loki and Mobius are very strong built characters at this point. So, like, they're well defined. So seeing them kind of put into different situations was a nice touch, and hopefully we get that with Sylvie going forward. But Rod, you mentioned Secret Invasion.
Whoa, you didn't ask me my final thought. I just want to say,
my bad.
I just want to
Jake,
say, in the scene where they're eating key lime pie, one of my biggest bugaboos in all of TV and movies, they so clearly were not actually eating it. Every single time they had a forkful, it was just of whipped cream. Rod is nodding. I assume you noticed it too. The pie, they clearly weren't eating it. And I understand that's because they don't want to have to reset and get a new piece of pie. But like, guess what? You're fucking Disney. Cut out some VFX shots and make 10 pies. You know what I mean? Stop it.
CGI the pie. I want use that would be awesome. You use so many practical sets. If y'all CGI the pie, I wouldn't even be mad. I'd be like, look at how they did that. That's how you use the money. Also, that pie was a color green key lime pie. It never is. And that's what made it look more delicious to me and I think that's why I watched every bite.
Yeah, same. I'm like, damn, that looks like, you know what? Speaking of McDonald's, that was like Shamrock Shake colored pie.
Yes.
Like, that's what that was.
Shout out to pie. Shout out to pie. Oh my gosh. Yeah, good key lime pie. Listen, man. You could really go places with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with Loki. It's you realize you get into these series and it's like, oh wow, we're moving along real quick. So we'll see how that plays out. Rod mentioned Secret Invasion. Secret Invasion was part of the subject of an article released by the Hollywood Reporter earlier this week. the main subject of that being Daredevil, as apparently Daredevil had shot for a couple of months in New York City, and Kevin Feige looked at what they had and did not think it was up to snuff. So the writers were let go. Everybody's out, and we're finding new people. And apparently, they're gonna keep certain parts of the show of what they have, and kind of stitch that together with whoever they decide to hire with that. And as the article goes deeper, there's a couple of things that stood out to me. One being, oh wow, we figured out that maybe we should have TV people do TV. Oh my god, I can't believe, why didn't we figure this out
You
earlier?
mean to tell me like a executive producer of movies should not be the one running a television show? That's that would imply that like for the 70 years that television has been a mainstay, that writers have been running it. Like, why would? What do you mean?
Hey, let's have an executive and just give him $150 million for every show. Just make 6 episodes. It does not need to have any pilot necessarily. Just make it. Just make it. Put it out there. Whatever. And I think the thing when I look at this, and Secret Invasion was a big topic in this article, is they took the scripts that Kyle Bradstreet wrote and tossed them things out, fired them, and there were production problems. They were running out of time to the point where there were conflicts with the actors in terms of they had other projects to do. So everything was a rush, and everything that we have been talking about, not only on that show, but just generally over the past year and a half to 2 years, has come to fruition in this story, where we find out they absolutely did not or do not know, because I think the question is still fair to be asked, do they know what they're doing? And I think it was alarming to me that when I see this, and there are people on the internet, and I get it, part of it when you work in comic book media is, listen, you got a relationship with Disney, they send you the stuff, and you don't want to go too crazy on them and whatnot. But there is no way in hell that I'm going to read an article like that, and the takeaway that I have from it is, oh, they figured it out. Things are going to be okay. They're going to take the time. My question is, how the hell did we get to this point in the first place? And the fact, to me, that they put out what they pretty much said to us, the customer, which is really the point of it. We are customers. We're paying customers. We are paying you to put out good product for us to be entertained. And you decided to just put out whatever the hell you wanted to put out for this amount of time and be like, hey, have it, enjoy it, whatever it is, this is what it is, as opposed to actually taking the time to put in the work and have this done correctly. TV needs to be done a specific way. I feel like Jake has said this 3 million times. I feel like I've said it 2 million times. Mm-hmm. So I will cede the floor actually first to you, Rod, because Rod, you are a writer. Rod, you are involved with You've been involved with making a TV show and all of that. What did you make of this report? Because to me, my mind was like, I almost lost it, because they really tried to play with us.
I did see you up and down my timeline, like just being like, and what about this part? Have y'all got to this sentence yet? I was more surprised that it was chaotic, because I think, at least in my mind, I associate Kevin Feige with running a pretty tight ship. I know in the movies, he definitely runs a pretty tight ship. You very rarely get like serious leaks. You can argue, obviously, the quality is up and down, but in a general level of Marvel quality typically is a through line, it's like we would be shocked if like the Flash was a decent Marvel movie. We'd be like, it's over. We'd honestly feel like this is the worst thing they've ever done. They can't come back from this. So I was kind of surprised it was so disorganized. Not having a head like a showrunner is, I can't even imagine doing a TV show without a showrunner. I literally where do you get your vision from? And if it's Feige, I can't imagine him seeing a different vision for so many different projects. It makes me wonder if behind the scenes there's like people are treated like the showrunner or something, or the director is basically taking place of the showrunner, because it has to be some command chain on a set.
It was usually it was another executive would be another producer.
Yeah, okay. See, that's weird. That's so that's super weird. Just thinking about the way the chain of command works on a TV show. I can't even imagine walking into an executive's office. You know what I mean? Like, I can't even like showing up at HBO. Like, let me talk to you for a second, man. What do you want to do with episode 4? Like anyway.
Yeah.
Like a showrunner.
Like, the whole reason a showrunner is a writer is because the way a show is produced has to come from the writing of it. If decisions about the larger scope of the show are being made from a producer standpoint, that will inherently hurt the show, because you need to start with, like, and the whole thing with them not having like a pilot script or whatever, that's not like, I think the reason they didn't do that because they're like, well, we're going to make a Secret Invasion show, so why bother writing a pilot script? Why don't we just write all 6 scripts? It's like, no, because you need to write the pilot script so you can make those production decisions. Like, okay, we have a pilot script. We know what sets we need. We know what characters we need. Like, once again, they really tried to reinvent the wheel in a way to try to have more control over it. Because clearly what Kevin Feige was afraid of, and this is because in movies you can get away with the producer taking a really active role like this, is he was afraid of, if they hired like the wrong head writer, that the whole show would like be out of Marvel's vision, right?
Yeah.
And my response to that is, tough shit don't go into television, ultimately. That like, you need to have a singular voice behind, not a single voice necessarily, but a voice behind television. And it's not even that, like, I think that executives and producers are unable to be creative or unable to have a vision of some kind. It's just the decisions they have to make are so tied up in things that have nothing to do with the creative process. They can't. Like, Luis D'Esposito or, Victoria Alonso, other previous people who have served in like these executive functions, they have to worry so much about other shit. They can't be making decisions creatively. And so the role of the executive needs to be the one who occasionally has to tell the showrunner no. Like, that sucks, but it has to happen. Like, that's the role. They can't be the one making the initial decision, because then you can't, the creative vision's disjointed, Then the creative side then has to try to catch up with the executive's vision.
Right.
And by the way,
I wanted to add one more thing too.
Ahead.
The other part of that was, I was so impressed, because how did you even make anything good? Like, if you go on Rotten Tomatoes and look at the rankings of their shows, most of the Marvel shows, the ones that happen under Disney Plus, are near the top. Other people have made Marvel shows, you know what I mean? And they're all near the bottom. It was worse than this when you had a showrunner and Ike Perlmutter did the Inhumans. That's like the worst Marvel show they've ever done. I'm like, dude, how did... I don't like, it's Baxter eating a wheel of cheese in Anchorman. It is at one.
I think it was a combination of a couple things. I think what happened was, I think WandaVision was unique given that it actually was like Kevin Feige's idea. So like, I think in that regard, he was lucky that his idea melded with what the creative vision of the show was. And I think like Loki, in part, I think a lot of it is that it was made during COVID and it was shot in England, and so I think that there's just a way that they had more independence. And then I think as it went on and as they were doing more things, I think that they had less trusted people involved. Like, the writers were like less people in their stable, and they got scared. And like, I think a notable thing that Ace
also going down the list closer to now, you got Miss Marvel that banged. She-Hulk was like, they had so much creative freedom in She-Hulk. I was, by the last episode, I was like, what the fuck? Like you know?
The wild part in it, which is crazy, because in that story it says that Jessica Gao, who was the head writer of She-Hulk, got sidelined by the director.
Yeah.
What is
like
happening?
How did they pull that?
How is anything good? Like, that's how it's. I read the article. I was like, but some of this was good to me. I'm not gonna take it away.
Right? No, you're right. You're right.
What was you just lucked into it? Did it randomly?
I think the thing. I think the thing with She-Hulk was that even though Jessica got fired, they gave it to the director, who's also a creative person. Like, it feels like the thing about Secret Invasion is that it was run by the executives. Like, that is really like, I think that ultimately, obviously, the showrunner should be the head writer, but if the showrunner is the like head director, that at least is better. Like that. And also, think with She-Hulk too is that eventually went back. Like, Jessica Gal ran it when they're writing it, and then when in production, it was run by Kat Coro, and then it eventually went back to Jessica Gal, I think, in post production.
Okay.
So like
Yeah.
they ended up, and like that's so like believe me, TV is chaos. Like there are
Yeah,
people
it
getting
is.
hired and fired all the
It
time.
is.
But once again, the idea of making a show where it is from inception from the
Right.
executive, that
Yeah.
is like a non-starter. You can't do that.
That's like it's
Yeah.
chaos but it's something that is organized that devolves into chaos as opposed to starting with chaos, creating something, chaos on the back end, and then a good chunk of them being like, well, that was good. So how did you make it? That's why you can't repeat it. Is it's good one time and then the next time it's chaos and then maybe it does. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, if anything, like it kind of speaks to the reason that the writer's strike took place. I think if anything, this was a bright neon sign that hey, this might not work, guys. You're getting away with it now, but just the idea of, in a lot of ways, burning money to because you don't have to spend $150 million on these shows.
And like they're like, okay, we got Kyle Bradstreet to work on it for a year. It's like, okay, you could do that, or you could, I don't know, it's a 6-episode show. You could get a bunch of writers. Well, let's call it a writer's room, a room of writers. You could hire multiple writers to work on it together and break it together, maybe over a couple months. And yeah, technically speaking, you might pay a little bit more money, but it'll take less time to have a more coherent vision. No one's ever done that before. That's not the way that we've been doing it forever.
And I do want to point out that even with a showrunner, there's different styles of showrunner and stuff. So like some are like heavy into writing, some are more into like the vision and coordinating stuff, and then there's different types of shows and stuff. You know, some of these shows are a little more quirky than the other shows as far as like you can feel the difference in each episode of each director and stuff. But just what they've been doing, I can see why they're changing it, and a lot of people think I think it's kind of still giving them too much credit when they kind of quote, you know, like, oh yeah, Kevin Feige saw the issues. It's literally in the WGA contract. You can't just keep running rooms this way. So it's not like they had a choice. The only choice they would have had with, like, say, Daredevil is we're just now officially going to put people in different roles, but, you know, we're going to make this show. Overhauling the writer's room or whatever, and really starting to do it by the contract, I don't know. Part of me feels like they're getting a little too much credit on the back end.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
They had this idea.
Well,
No,
that's
you
the
didn't.
one that I want. No, they didn't. This was the hand being forced, and I mean, I think there was stuff that I heard about Daredevil prior to this happening, where you would just hear that, oh, there might be a storyline that fans won't be happy with. They might kill off one of your favorite characters for not really a significant reason, and then have Matt Murdock not suit up till episode 4. It's just like, okay, all right, man. Like, what is happening?
That's the good thing about Kevin Feige, though, is he is such a nerd. I'm sure he looked at that shit and said, nope, start all the way over. Like that part, because he didn't have to get rid of everyone. He could have just been like, you're the showrunner now, you're the head writer, run the room. But whatever they came up with, he must have been like, fuck this whole thing.
Yeah. I will say the thing that was good news out of it, in my opinion, was the report you don't want to hear is after filming 4 episodes, they're firing everyone and going forward. I would much rather hear after 4 episodes, they're scrapping most of it. Like, obviously that's bad in terms of like a time standpoint, but I'm much more confident if they're going to rethink it. And, you know, it's just like, it's annoying that it took them this long. I'm willing to, I want to see if they actually do commit to the change. If it seems like these shows have a more coherent vision, then I will give them credit then. Like, I'm not, even though it's obvious with these gigantic corporations, I'm not in the business of if they make good changes, saying like you should have done it earlier, because like then they'll whatever. So like I'll give him credit if it ends up seeming like they actually made changes. But if it feels like this was just a long-winded press release for them to say we're going to start following the new WGA guidelines, then like I'll say the things I've been saying for 4 million more times.
That's kind of where I stand on it too. Like I said, reading this, because this is the stuff that you hear about at Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
So like this type of stuff, this is the first time you hear it to that level. And this has kind of just been a trickling down effect for the last year. Started with the VFX, continue with Victoria Alonso, continue with a lot of these different things that you hear about the show or the movie having this mandate, this director's kind of going off the rails and not, adhering to the stuff, and in a lot of ways in the movie, sometimes even Kevin Feige overseeing too much. There's all of that. When you put all of that together, you get what we have right now, where people are kind of looking at the MCU for the first time like, oh no, this is
it's a catch-22, right? Because we at once kind of want to know there's a plan and an overall vision and everything's leading somewhere, but we also kind of don't want to feel that hand, right? We want to like we don't want to be like, this is just a trailer for Thor in the middle of Iron Man. We want to feel like, oh, we're excited about Thor while watching Iron Man, but just don't wedge it in there. And it was getting kind of wedgy the last couple years. It was very like, this is the next movie coming, so stick around and expect the trailer for that at the end of this movie. And once you get to that formulaic feeling, I think you lose people.
Yes, and I promised everybody, I am, and I said this on Twitter, I am an optimist. I do believe that things will eventually find a way back. But I also will not just read that and look at it like, yo, this is crazy. So just to keep that in perspective, it is crazy. You can't put it any other way. So just to put that part in perspective, we'll see what happens, but it is notable that, I mean, listen, Daredevil's an 18-episode series. So, like, that's not an easy, that's a long shoot. That thing is supposed to be shooting for about a calendar year. So whenever they start back up, it's going to take
I don't even want to know where Charlie Cox's hairline is by the end of the 18 episodes. They're going to take it forever. I'm sorry.
Charlie Cox got a shot.
No, I'm sorry. Hey, I'm not doing too great myself either. I can relate. I mean, so when I'm his age, it'll be much worse. So
So we'll see what happens, man. But yeah, it was something that we had to talk about because it took me by surprise. Yeah. Like that was a very surprising thing to see. So we'll see what happens going forward. And, we'll continue to try and enjoy the MCU. Also, one last little nugget I'll add. Jake, a couple weeks ago, we did this Jake had this little take that the Marvels it's gonna be rough at the box office.
No, specifically, it was that about the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes will outgross the Marvels by over $100 million worldwide. Was my take.
And Jake right now is looks like he's in the pole position.
The long-term tracking for the Marvels, I believe, was like, what was it, 185 domestic or something like that total. And if that is the number, then I should go to Vegas because my predictions are incredible. That I will win walking away. I hope it's better. I really do, because I want them to do well. But woof.
Yeah. That did not.
Hopefully, word of mouth. Hopefully, it's good and word of mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it with everything still going on with SAG-AFTRA and the breaking off of talks earlier this week. Obviously, if you can't have the actors promote the movie, that is a big killer.
Especially with those actresses that are such charismatic people that, like, oh my God. Yeah. Like, I watched Ms. Marvel and said, that is a movie star. That get her off the small screen.
It really is.
And now they're gonna they're gonna whiff on this with the actor strike and not even get to take advantage of that.
It's tough. Yeah. Oh man, just tough stuff. But we'll see what happens as we get closer to the Marvels. We'll continue to cover Loki. As always, this show has been a lot of fun. Rod, thank you for joining us, brother. Again, appreciate you as always.
Yes, sir.
Get in your plugs, man. Where can we find you? Where can we follow you?
Just go to theblackguywhotips.com or search The Black Guy Who Tips on any podcast app. Is you'll get into it and enjoy that. It's me and my wife talking pop culture and news and stuff. And the other thing you can do is check out the podcast Drape Tomaniacs. Put in DRAPE. It'll automatically pop up in your podcast feed. I know it's hard to spell, but Drape Tomaniacs, Unshackle History. It's about Black history, but it's also like unknown stories. It's funny, it's comedy, it's sketch, and I think and I wrote a lot of it. Okay, so I think you'll
Nice.
recognize my voice and enjoy the jokes, but also you'll learn a lot about Black history.
Yes, Rod is a very talented brother.
Mhm.
Appreciate you for joining us once more. Jay Christie, where can we find you, sir?
You can follow me on Twitter at the J Christie. Listen to my other podcast, Love It First Psych, where we talk about the USA Network original series Psych. We're on in season 4. It's a lot of fun, so check that out if you're so inclined.
Yes, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at AnthonyCanton_3. Follow the show on all platforms at MC University Pod. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Continue to build that, and of course the Patreon, as I mentioned at the top. Appreciate everybody for supporting and listening. Also, make sure you 5-star on both Spotify and Apple. Do that 5-star thing, and yeah, the Loki ride continues. It'll be interesting when we get to the finale of Loki and the Marvels at the same exact week, same exact time. So that's gonna be a hell of a week. But we're a few weeks from that. Should be a lot of fun. For Anthony Mays, for Rod Morrow, for Jay Christie, I'm Anthony Canton III. This has been Marvel Cinematic University. We'll talk to you next time.